don't want you to know what it feels like to keep all of this pain so concealed. Like I want out of this plane, I told my psych, you don't need to, you don't need to. I'm losing patience, living in damnation. I'm dark vibrations, singing incantations. It must sound like I'm mad, I'm never found to be glad. I'm working out of the math, the answer's always been sad, yeah. I'm a zero summation, lost in translation. Here's my resignation, from this life I'm not staying. My whole lifestyle passing fad. You'll remember the times we had, the times we had, yeah. All these pleasures my brain can't have, I want out, so please don't be sad. Give it up cause I'm getting out, don't be sad, you could let it out. All the shit I'm forgetting now, my whole life I've been checking out. All I said you could send it out, light it up, now I'm headed out. This is the end of my part now, we will be never apart, no. I'm losing patience, living in damnation. I'm dark vibrations, singing incantations. It must sound like I'm mad, I'm never found to be glad. I'm working out of the math, the answer's always been sad, yeah. Don't leave, I need you with me. Don't die, I need you alive. Don't go, don't leave me alone. You said, yeah. My entire life feels like one big mistake, and all these pills inhibit re-uptake. I can't arrive at any reason to wait. Take it one at a time, only take it one night at a time. And I don't care, cause I don't give, I take. From this world so superficial and fake, in all your joys I simply cannot relate. Take it one at a time, only take it one night at a time. I say goodbye, it's getting late now. Please don't cry, you'll know I made it out. Say goodbye before I fade out, before I fade out, before I fade out. I'm losing patience, living in damnation. I'm dark vibrations, singing incantations. It must sound like I'm mad, I'm never found to be glad. I'm working out of the math, the answer's always been sad, yeah. I'm a zero summation, lost in translation. Here's my resignation, from this life I'm not staying. My whole life's a passing fad. You'll remember the times we had, times we had, yeah. Let it out, all the shit I'm forgetting now. My whole life I've been checking out. All I said you can send it out, light it up, now I'm headed out. I don't want you to know what it feels like to keep all of this pain so concealed. Like I want out of this plane, I told my psych, you don't need to, you don't need to. I'm losing patience, living in damnation. I'm dark vibrations, singing incantations. It must sound like I'm mad, I'm never found to be glad. I'm working out of the math, the answer's always been sad, yeah. I'm a zero summation, lost in translation. Here's my resignation, from this life I'm not staying. My whole life's a passing fad. You'll remember the times we had, the times we had, yeah. All these pleasures my brain can't have, I want out, so please don't be sad. Give it up cause I'm getting out, don't be sad, you could let it out. All the shit I'm forgetting now, my whole life I've been checking out. All I said you could send it out, light it up, now I'm headed out. This is the end of my part now, we will be never apart, no. I'm losing patience, living in damnation. I'm dark vibrations, singing incantations. It must sound like I'm mad, I'm never found to be glad. I'm working out of the math, the answer's always been sad, yeah. Don't leave, I need you with me. Don't die, I need you alive. Don't go, don't leave me alone. You said, yeah. My entire life feels like one big mistake, and all these pills inhibit re-uptake.
Wow, that was a hard stop. I'm sorry about that, guys. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the zoo. I'm the Rusty Panda, and I am here for you. So we got Josh in the house. What up?
What's going on?
I feel like I always pronounce your last name wrong, so can you give me a lesson in it?
Yes, that is okay too. Most people do. We actually use it as a way to tell if a telemarketer is calling. It's great. Um, Usually I tell people like whether you're a Disney fan, I kind of go, like the ape from Tarzan, Turk. And
Turk?
if you're a Scrubs fan,
Turk!
I say Turk from Scrubs.
Yay! Okay, I'll never
There you
forget
go.
that. Turk from Scrubs is the best.
All right.
Yeah. Well, hey, everybody, welcome. If you're new to Wiki Wednesday, this is a show where we get the streamer on a show. We also do moderators. I also want to call out that we do moderators and content creators. We get them on the show. We ask them 15 things they like, 5 things they don't. We go down the Wikipedia rabbit hole, learning things about the streamer, learning things about the topic, learning things about ourselves. So I usually put up something that's really relevant to the person that is uh usually that's important to the person, like Nashville, Tennessee. So why don't you go ahead and just tell me and exactly what uh this means to you, why Nashville is so prevalent for you.
Absolutely. I mean, Nashville, I made a lot of records in Nashville. And I think my a lot of the songs that I wrote and released past the first album that I made were really shaped by my time in Nashville. It was kind of a crazy story on how I got there, but I was touring pretty extensively in the UK and had released an album over there, did really well. And we were opening up for this band, playing like theaters in the UK. We did our own university tours out there. And then somebody on the team was like, hey, you're a songwriter, you're writing all this stuff on your own. You should, check out Nashville. It's kind of blowing up with songwriting and stuff. So I was like, yeah, like that would be cool. I thought it was just country music though. And they were like, oh, no, no, there's a lot more going on down there these days.
Mm-hmm.
So, I, on a whim, kind of thought about Nashville, started looking it up, and I had been booked on this songwriting festival in Colorado. So
Ooh.
I go out there and I play the festival, and one of the people that's doing the festival is John Oates of Hall and Oates.
Oh.
And we end up meeting, and he's like just such a terrific guy. Um, and we end up meeting, and he goes, so, like, tell me about yourself and like what you're doing. And I said, well, I've got all these songs. I'm looking to make a new record. He goes, have you ever been down to Nashville? And I said, no, actually, but people have been telling me that I should go down there. And he's like, well, if you're looking for somebody to make the record with, I got a buddy down there that like did some of my stuff. If you wanted to talk to him, and that's how I ended up down in Nashville. I ended up hooking up with a producer friend of his. And then Teddy was the guy that made Here's to Change with me. We co produced Beautiful Tragedy together, wrote a couple of songs together, and that was my introduction to Nashville. And I spent about 6, 7 years down there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're kind of a big deal.
I mean, I I'm really fortunate to be able to do something that I really love and have a lot of people respond to it in a very, very cool way.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean that. It's just you've earned every single thing that you've done, and I think that you deserve to have all of that positive reactions, positive what am I trying to say? Commotion about you.
I
Um
appreciate that.
and so, having that fan base, especially on Twitch, I see how many people just absolutely love you. And I can only imagine what it's like out there in the real world.
I'm grateful for it. I always looked at music growing up, kind of going, okay, I'm gravitating to this song and it feels like the singer's talking to me. Like it feels like they understand where I'm at with
Right.
this feeling, with this situation. with life in general. And when I started writing my own stuff, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be that voice for people that don't really know how they're feeling in that moment, or just need to feel like somebody else out there has been in the same place or a similar place to
Right.
where they are and what they're going through. And through that, I've been able to meet some incredible people on and off Twitch that I'm really, really fortunate to be able to call turkeys.
I love that you call them turkeys too. That's so great. Um, Tell me now, you why did you choose Twitch? Did you start at Twitch? Like, why did you choose Twitch to come here?
No, actually, I started doing live streams on an app called Periscope and Meerkat.
Okay,
Like
Paris.
back when like there was the first ever iteration of live streaming.
Okay.
And so Twitter was the first app that was doing it, and they were trying to figure out which service provider to use, and it was like a big battle between Periscope and Meerkat.
Mhm.
And so we used both when we were touring in the UK, and then Periscope kind of became Twitter Live, and then Facebook started to do Facebook Live. Instagram came out with the capability once they were, purchased by Facebook, and
Right.
so that was my introduction to live streaming, and I had been doing that probably since like 2016, 2015. Um, and then when the pandemic hit and I couldn't go out and play shows and perform for people,
Yeah.
I think it was like 24 hours into it, I was just like going crazy, sitting in my house and going like I need to play again. I need to perform for
Yeah.
people. I can't just not do that. And a friend of mine at the time that was really into the gaming side of things was like, "Well, have you thought about Twitch?" And he showed me the gaming streams, and I was like, "This is really cool, but I don't play games as much." And he goes, "Well, there's a whole music section on this thing." And I started to follow some of the music streamers, and yeah, it was like the summer of 2020
Yeah.
that I started streaming.
And that's not uncommon. Your story is not uncommon for 2020. A
For sure.
lot of people like just felt the need to still connect. And I think that it's interesting in 2024 now how many people have fizzled because they
Yeah.
are now doing human interactions. So people who I loved the person who I got this idea from, right? His name was Tipsy Root. He was a puppeteer. Coolest
That's
guy
cool.
ever. He had puppets and he had shows and it was but he was really really cool. I know it sounds kind of, but
No, that's awesome.
it was really cool. And he did a version of Wiki Wednesday, and then I went ahead and adapted it. But he's not on Twitch anymore. I can't even contact him. He's off the grid.
Oh wow.
And I'm like, I miss you. Like, I miss those days. I miss the days of Twitch Sings. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember Twitch Sings.
Mm-hmm. And then
Right at the beginning, they were like doing that thing, and it was cool
it
because
was so cool.
it was almost like an after party kind of feel,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
And they had it going and it was great. And then DMCA came down and was like, hey, we're gonna shut this down December 2020. And I was like, man, this is not gonna be good for the music community at all.
Yeah.
And it kind of hasn't. It's good that you have so many originals because I mean, people get slammed even for playing, regular songs too well, and then they get muted.
Well, I remember when, like originally, you could put up videos of like clips and highlights of whatever songs you were playing on the stream, and then we got this email right around that time that was like, "Hey, new regulations, and you can't any videos can't be made public if you play covers."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Wow!" So there was like a whole. I remember the changing of the guard as it was. I mean, look from a creator's standpoint and from like a copyright holder standpoint, I get why they did it. Um, and it's not very different from a lot of the stuff that you saw happen like in the early 2000s in the music business
Right.
in general,
Mm-hmm.
was that all of a sudden there was all of this new technology, and then the record labels were kind of like, wait, we don't know how to use this. We got to figure out how this falls into, how we break an artist and how the artist can monetize. And so it's almost like a reaction to the technology developing instead of like working with it at the time that it's actually developing.
That is an absolutely great way to explain it. Yeah, I like singing karaoke. I find that as somebody who's just dabbling, like I make music, but I'm not very good at instruments. I've just never been good at
I gotcha.
instruments. And so I like producing music, but then I also like it when I could sing karaoke. And what is it? Laint Angry PFB. Welcome on in. Um,
Angry, what's going on?
okay, angry, perfect. That's an easier way to call. But I want to do karaoke, and I can't the proper way. I can shut off different sounds and stuff to make it not go to the VOD, but that's really complicated. Why can't I just sing karaoke? I'm not infringing on anything, so I just do it, turn off the thing to the VOD, and then don't even publish the VOD.
Yeah, and it does create that situation where, there's a community of people that are going to want to see something like that. Um, and even on YouTube, there are channels that are dedicated to creating karaoke tracks for some of the top songs that are coming up, and it's even like a week or two after they're released, you'll find 3 or 4 YouTube channels that have like a piano version or a tuned down version or an acoustic guitar version.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, all of those channels have to have like a huge disclaimer for
Yeah.
like, in no way, shape, or form can you release this on Spotify or any DSP. And it's like, okay, yeah, like I get it,
Yep.
with technology being so prevalent and with everybody having the ability to record something, get it to a certain level, and then put it out there, they really had to figure out, how to keep that intellectual property thing
Yeah.
where it is.
Absolutely. And I mean I understand it. I think but exactly what you said, DMCA came down hard with the hammer instead of just collaborating with the people and the artists. And so it was a reaction, rather than working together. But off of this topic, and the only reason I really wanted to talk about this is cuz you really are, this is gonna sound stupid. You really are so worldly. Like you've been so many places with
Thank
your
you.
music, and so it's just funny to come to the corner of Twitch and to find a fan base here too. Um, it's like finding a niche, and you found a nice little community here. I think that your turkeys are pretty cool.
It was great, like finding people that were very like-minded too, in the way that, people like Angry and Robbie and Peter and all of these amazing people that I met through Twitch that, loved music, loved interacting, loved that sense of community and that being there for each other, kind of all for one, one for all kind of feel.
Hmm.
And then past that, when we started doing charity events and, teamed up with Variety International to do the show Heart stuff, all of the turkeys were so involved and so into it. And it was really cool to find people that had the same affinity for doing good as they did music. And I felt like I found people that I could relate to on so many different levels. And it was through a really cool kind of just off chance that somebody mentioned like, hey, you should
Go on
stream on
Twitch.
Twitch.
Yeah. Oh
And
wow.
yeah, at the time we started streaming too, it had been a while, around 2 or 3 years since I had been to the UK, and we had plans to go back in 2020,
Mm,
but obviously we weren't going very many places. And so
right.
when I started streaming, it was amazing the number of people that I was actually reconnected with too from the UK that were like, "Hey, I remember seeing you on the first tour with the Soldiers when you were in like, Cornwall or when you were in Barrow." And I was like, "Oh my God, like that's a while ago. Thank you so much for coming back." Like that's,
Yeah.
So that
Wow.
was really cool,
Yeah, reconnecting with people who you've met out in the wild is
right?
very interesting. Slurbo, welcome on in. Um, so okay, so really cool that you're here. I'm really happy to have met you.
You as well.
But okay, so we've done that, and we'll start with music. Um, let's start with plain white tees.
That's a good one.
And I'm curious why this is on your list. I saw plain white tees on there. The only thing that I had that was close, I have the Postal Service and Death Cab for Cutie
Oh, that's awesome.
because I saw them in concert like 2 months ago. And so I wanted to wear a shirt that was like, hey, I sort of listened to that music too. like,
Phenomenal. I loved the emo and pop punk scenes.
yeah.
I was so into that. And it's funny, the Plain White Tees, they were kind of towards the tail end of that period of my life. I still listen to that stuff. Like that's maybe 60% of what's on my playlists and stuff when I'm listening to like Apple Music and whatever. But
Right.
um I loved going to these underground shows and like seeing Newfound Glory and Anne Berlin, Fallout Boy.
Yeah.
Um, we saw Motion City Soundtrack open up. Like
Yes.
they had these great bills where it was like five or six of these acts that were coming through, and it was fantastic because you felt like you were watching something that was quintessentially your own. You know, they weren't too big that it was like everybody knew what was going on, but it was big enough that it was important to
Right.
the people that were there. And I loved that. And the Plain White Tees, I was in Niagara Falls when I heard the song for the first time, Hey There Delilah. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, this is something completely different. Like it's acoustic guitar and violin, and it's beautiful, has the same kind of feel of all of these other songs, but it's so its own thing. And I at the time had been like writing some stuff and I would play around, like I was working at a summer camp and I would play for small groups of people, but I hadn't really like performed yet or gotten on stage. And a friend of mine, very close friend of mine, was in charge of the final staff social that year. And he made it a talent show. And he also put me on the bill. And the day before the show, like that day, we were heading home to like get our stuff and then coming back to the camp to do the social. And he goes, "Oh, by the way, you're playing tonight and you're playing last." And so I'm like, "Oh, okay, great, thanks." So I'm going home and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to sing, and I can't think about anything other than "Hey There, Delilah."
Mm-hmm.
And so I got back to camp and I pulled another friend of mine aside and I was like, "Hey, you know, you're really good at guitar. Do you know this song?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Great. Would you come up and like play this with me tonight?" He was like, "Sure." So he got up on stage and played the acoustic guitar and I sang the song and the place was silent. Like the whole time I was singing, there were probably around 150, 200 people
Mm-hmm.
in this like kind of tented stage like dome that they had at this camp. And it was silent and it was really eerie because I was like standing up on stage in front of all of these people, some of whom I didn't even know because the camp was so big.
Right.
And at the end of it, I just remember like kind of closing my eyes for a second, going like, okay, we're heading to the end. Like whatever happens, happens. And I just remember it was almost like slow motion. Like I couldn't hear anything. And then everything just kind of came back into focus and the place just went up. And everybody was standing up and cheering and clapping. And I was looking out at this, having a complete out of body experience. And I got off stage that night. And the first thought I had was, whatever I do next, I have to do this again.
Yes.
And that was the catalyst for all of this.
And what age range were you at that point?
I was like 16,
Okay.
17. Like I was pretty young.
Okay. And
Yeah.
Davey, welcome on in.
What's up, Davey?
Um yeah, so okay, so 16 and then as far as guitar, like did you just teach yourself guitar? Did you take lessons?
So I'd been playing guitar since I was about 14.
Mhm.
And I had taken some lessons and then was just kind of picking stuff up as I went after a while and kind of developing my own style with it because I wanted to learn the basics and I wanted to get to a point where I could, switch very easily between chords. Once I got there, I found that because I hadn't had any like really serious formal training, I was doing things on the guitar that other people who had that kind of training probably wouldn't do.
Right.
And it was developing its own feel and its own sound. And I was like, okay, I don't want to mess with that too much. So if there's something that I need to learn specifically, I'm going to like ask for help with that and take lessons. I am all for you can never learn enough about what you love to do. So there's always a different perspective you can take. There's always a different person that does something really, really well that you can learn something from. And you also, at least for me, I also wanted to make sure that it still felt like Josh.
Right.
And so I kind of balanced taking lessons versus learning stuff on my own with the guitar. And it wasn't until maybe a year or even earlier that summer that I kind of started singing more readily. And again, it was just one of those experiences where I was playing the guitar, sitting down, at a campfire with a couple of my buddies, and a really beautiful female counselor sits down right in front of me and goes, "Hey, like that's so cool. You're playing guitar. What are you playing?" And my buddies are looking at me and they're like their jaws are on the floor. And I'm feeling really confident at this point, so I puff out my chest and I'm like, "Oh, it's Oasis. It's Wonderwall." She goes, "Oh, cool. Can you play it again and like sing it this time because I won't be able to follow along unless you sing it." And my stomach goes into my toes because I haven't sang for, anything other than my shampoo bottle at this point.
Right.
But I'm like, okay, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So
Right.
I started the song again, I sang it, and afterwards she just kind of looked at me and was like, "I had no idea that you were a singer." And I said, "Neither did I." And from there I was like, okay, I got to get some singing lessons. Let's figure this out. So I started taking voice lessons it was funny, it was the same company that was like I found a guitar teacher with, and they were people that would like you didn't have to go somewhere. It wasn't like a conservatory. They would kind of meet you either at your place or wherever it was. So they would come over to the house, and I took lessons for a couple months for vocals, and then for guitar it was yeah. And periodically I've found like different vocal teachers and different vocal techniques that I've attached to over the years just to kind of train the muscle.
Right.
Wonder what happens if I, like hit the gas a little bit harder here, if I pull back a little bit here, or, direct the sound in this way. And it's cool because, a lot of there's the whole argument of like, is it the guitar that sounds good or is it the player?
Right.
And I'm always of the mind that it's the player. It's not what you have, it's how you use it.
Absolutely.
And so I love applying that to not only the guitar, but my voice as well.
That's amazing. Okay, so Plain White Tees, Hey There Delilah, got the excitement that you're a singer and
Caught the
guitarist.
bug for sure.
You caught the bug. What would you say to someone who is scared to keep going in music because they feel they're not good enough? This is like questions that I like to ask musicians.
I would say that imposter syndrome is a real thing. It is a real thing. And especially in the social media world that we live in, right? It's really easy to see the Instagram lives that are presented to us and compare ourselves in a split second to what we think is going on in somebody else's life. And the truth of the matter is, we have no idea what anybody else is experiencing and what it took for them to get where they are, or even if what the thing that they're showing us is actually what it is, if that makes any sense. I mean, watching all of these documentaries are coming out about bands that, as a kid, my parents would listen to, and then I kind of listened to, whether it's the Bon Jovi one or, the Nickelback documentary that just came out on Netflix. And you get this whole other perspective of the band and what they did. But the one through line that I see with all of these people is no one sounded like Bon Jovi. And for a while there, everybody was telling them that they sucked and that they didn't want to sign them because they sounded like Bon Jovi.
Right.
Nickelback got so much flack. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but they got so much shit because they sounded like Nickelback.
Right.
And when you look at how successful they were versus the hate that they got, it's because both of those things are equally proportionate to the fact that they were themselves. No other band sounded like them. And because of that, no other band lasted as long. I would argue that, you look at a band like Fall Out Boy that was part of a scene and part of a dynamic, but had a very, very specific sound in their singer.
Mm-hmm.
The pronunciation, the tone, the way that he sang, that separated them from everybody else. Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, Bryan Adams, all of these artists that stand the test of time do so because they are unique, because they are themselves. And so for anybody that is experiencing that nervousness of like, what if I'm not good enough? Know that same thought has gone through all of those people's heads at least once throughout their career, if not more than that. And all that is a sign that you're doing something important. I know that sounds really weird, but when you have those thoughts of like, I don't know if this is safe, and it actually isn't because it's an actual safety issue, it's because you're basically taking yourself out of the things that you're used to and that you can control. Right. You can't control whether somebody's going to like what you do. You can't control whether somebody's going to hear something in your song that they don't like or they think could be better from their perspective, because there's a million different people in the world and everybody's got 7 million opinions. And that's a great thing because it creates an environment where everybody can find their place and everybody can find their people. The only reason that I ever got comfortable do it, again, it's going to go back to a story, but the only reason that I ever felt comfortable getting up in front of people and saying or doing anything, let alone playing an instrument, was because I experienced the thing that I was the most afraid of. There was a speech competition that they made us do from grade 4 up until like grade 9 in grade school, junior high, and high school. And the first year that we were doing this speech competition, I got selected to be in the finals in front of the entire school. And you had to deliver a speech within 3 minutes, and it had to be like, you had to follow a certain criteria.
Right.
I had never experienced stage fright before. I had never experienced that kind of situation or that kind of doubt or that kind of fear. And I get up in front of the entire school, including kids that are like 4 or 5 years older than I am. And I just start laughing, like uncontrollably laughing.
Oh my God.
Could not stop myself, was shaking, and basically spent my time doing the speech laughing. I gave the speech, but I was like 3 minutes over. And when I could hear people giggling in the audience. I had a couple people in my class come up to me afterwards and they were like, dude, you blew it. Like, holy, I don't want to be you coming back to class. and I broke down. I was sweating, I was crying. I was like, I can't show my face in class again. I'm gonna have to like witness protection program this.
Right?
And it was my mom who was at the speech competition. She said, "Look, I could take you home right now, but I think it would be a good idea for you to go back to class." And I walked into class and I was sweating bullets because I was like, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know who's going to make fun of me or what's going to happen.
Right.
And there were comments made, but when I actually thought about it in those moments, as much as it frustrated me that people were making comments, it didn't hurt. I wasn't in pain. I was okay. I
Right.
survived it. And whether that was a good thing or not will be determined, like at some point, I think. But it created this fearlessness in me that I was like, I've already experienced the worst case scenario with this. So I'm just going to pick up the mic and do what I do and be myself. And because I know I've already seen the worst that can happen, and it's not that bad.
That's
And so, yeah, sometimes in order to get to the place that you want to go, you're sitting there on the edge of the cliff and you're looking over it like, I don't know, I don't know what this is going to be like. And sometimes all you got to do is let yourself jump. And once you do, you realize it's not that big of a fall, and you actually can fly pretty well.
That's so inspirational. That I wish I could like clip that entire thing. You'll be on video and stuff, but
I appreciate that.
yeah, that really was great. Um nice. And I love that you brought up imposter syndrome. So explain imposter syndrome as you know it. Basically in have you said you've gone through imposter syndrome before where you've
Oh my
like
gosh.
all the time?
Absolutely. I when I started in the music business, I was like, I don't know enough about this to like do it myself. I've got to have people around me, like a team, to do this. And so we had a team, and as we were going through the team, I started to figure out like, oh, I can actually do this, and I'm actually doing a lot of the things that some of these people were telling me that they were doing. And so I got a little bit more confidence, like, okay, maybe I can actually do this. Maybe I do belong here. And at different moments, you come up against these things where it's like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And after a while, I stopped phrasing it as, oh, I can't do that, or I don't know enough about this, or I'm not sure that this is the place for me. And I started phrasing it as like, okay, there's an opportunity here for me to learn how to do this. I'm starting in the same place that everybody who's starting out on this particular subject is starting out. But I have all of this evidence behind me to show me that all of the things that I thought I couldn't do before, once I actually took the time to do them, I could do them pretty well. And I didn't do them like anybody else, I did them like me. But that's the whole point. And so,
Give me 1 second. You're frozen, and there's a big like button in front
oh
of your
wow.
face, and I have no
Really?
idea how that got there. I didn't do it. Um,
This happens periodically. I don't
does
know
it?
why it does that.
Hold
So
on.
hold on one sec. Let me just sometimes it does this. 1 second.
That was crazy. I thought there we go. I thought
There we
somebody
go.
like infiltrated our Discord call. That was very very
It
weird.
it's really strange too, because I've got an external camera plugged into this thing, but it's like a Mac thing that when you put your thumb up, it like creates a
Oh.
speech bubble, and it's like, okay. I thought we were in the clear because I was using a camera, but I
No,
guess it's going through the computer.
that's funny.
Um,
But yeah,
but yeah,
that's getting that that ability to feel confident enough to be yourself, like you said, and go ahead and Discord really likes you, Josh.
I
That's
appreciate that, Davey.
yeah. Um, but yeah, basically, okay, it's the subjective experience of perceived self doubt in one's abilities and accomplishment compared with others, despite evidence to suggest the contrary. So basically, you felt like, for me, I'll use me as an example. Like I go ahead and I look at someone like you or some of the other musicians, even like I don't know if you know Fenwa Terrien.
Yeah.
But like he's in Kansas City. He's playing shows. I've been to his shows, and I look at him and I'm like, I wish I could play guitar like that. You know, I wish I could be that. I wish I'm confident enough. I did an open mic with him, and I just failed miserably. Open mic went so bad, and he stayed for it and he was compassionate enough for it, and I was like, gosh, I wish I was you. So I go through imposter syndrome all the freaking time because all of the Twitch people who are on there who are doing loops and stuff too. I'm like, man.
For sure.
But
And
yes.
it's
Go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry to interrupt. It's
No.
um I love the part that you read about,
Oh.
you know, in spite of the evidence that suggests otherwise.
Right.
And it wasn't until I started to write, and it wasn't until I got into storytelling
Mhm.
and songwriting that I realized that what we believe is true, what we look at as truth, is, when you break it down, just a belief that's been repeated over and over again that we found evidence for. And a belief is really just a story that we've told ourselves about how life works, or about how that situation is, or about who we are, that we found evidence for over and over again. And so the idea that you can't do something, if that's the lens that you're looking at a situation in, there's definitely going to be evidence that you can't do something. And it just depends on if you switch out that lens for, okay, what are the reasons that I can do this, or even get better at this? There will be evidence for that too. And I think that's awesome. And I don't mean to, be that guy. I think it's awesome that you did the open mic and that you had that experience where it was like, this is not what I would have wanted it to be, because you survived it.
Yeah.
And if that's the worst that's going to happen, it can only get better from there.
Aw. That's sweet. Thank you. You did better than my therapist just now. I'm not going to lie. I got a little more confidence every single second you spoke. So, good job.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
All right. So, let's get back on task here. Tell me about, you have a few bands on here that I want to go ahead and do
Oh, yeah.
the Soldiers.
So the Soldiers were the first band that I ever opened up for, like, period, full stop.
Wow.
They were a group of 3 serving British military, in various different ranks in the army. But they got together because one of the guys had been on the X Factor, and Ryan did pretty well on the X Factor, and then met a music manager that was like, it would be really cool if we could get 2 or 3 other guys from the army and create almost like a band of
Soldiers.
serving military, the Soldiers. And so they found 2 other guys to join Ryan, Gary and Richie, and they released an album, sold 1 million copies in the UK, and they went on tour. And we happened to be playing in a club where their manager was coming in that night, and he approached us and was like, would you like to open up for the tour? So we went from playing like a string of 3 or 4 shows in London to that following January flying to Scotland
Wow.
and driving to Glenrothes, Scotland, staying in this like really, really old monastery and starting this tour. And so I had never played theaters before. I had never been on tour before. This was like the first
Yeah.
huge thing that I had ever done. And I had heard horror stories about being an opening act and being put through your paces by the headliner and all of the stuff that they could put you through. And these guys had sold 1 million copies. So I was like, I don't know the personalities that I'm walking into. I'm just going to kind of be quiet and keep to myself and do my thing. And from the very beginning, we walked into backstage, and Ryan is back there playing football. And he goes, "Oh, you must be the opening act. You're Josh. I'm Ryan. It's so nice to meet you." Like, gives me a hug, gives my dad a hug because at the time I'm definitely not old enough to be doing things on my own.
Right.
And then he's like, "Yeah, if you need anything, like, here, let me show you the rooms." And he's taking us around,
Wow.
and he introduces us to Gary and Richie. And then he's like, "Yeah, this is our dressing room. If you need anything, if you want a beer, if you want, like, just come in and like hang out." I was like, "Cool." And then I went back into my room and I was like, "Are they just being nice? Like, I don't know."
Right.
And that was my first experience being on the road. We developed such a close relationship, not only with them, but with the guys that were backing them up on like guitar and bass and stuff, that entire tour, if we weren't in the green room hanging out, we were at a bar hanging out pre or post show. We would stay up until 3, 4 in the morning, hanging out, trading stories. There was one night where we got back to the hotel and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna close the bar down, but if you guys don't mind us hanging out, we have a back room. We can still serve you in the back room. Would you guys mind? All we ask is that you bring your instruments down and maybe do like a private little like jam session for us." And so we did this thing until like 3 o'clock in the morning, just hanging out, playing guitars and trading songs back and forth in the back of this bar. And like we made so many incredible memories, and they really taught me what it meant to be on the road and what it could be like being on the road. And I swore in that moment when I got back from that first tour, I was like, whenever I have somebody opening for me, whenever that is, in whatever capacity, I am going to be the way that they were to me.
Wow.
I'm going to give that person a shot the way they gave me a shot.
That's so good. Alchemytation, welcome on in. That's so good. That's such a great story, and that's such a great experience.
Oh, yeah.
That
I owe a lot to those guys.
So just so you know, I don't know if you know who Alchemytation is. He's a Smilecore guitarist from Canada.
Nice.
And he does
fellow Canadian, eh?
Oh yeah, and he just kills it on guitar. I mean, it's brilliant. He's so good.
Oh, that's awesome.
I highly suggest anybody who's in the room to give him a follow. He's so
I gotta check out your stuff, man.
He's so jolly. He has stuff on Spotify. But we
Nice.
call it Smilecore because he's constantly smiling while he's playing like this hardcore like guitar stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so
What part of Canada? Not to derail this
no,
too much, but
yeah, what kind of where are you in Canada? You're on the east side, aren't you?
okay. I like East Coast, like Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, or like Ontario.
Moncton.
Oh, New Brunswick. Right on. Okay. It's beautiful out there.
Yeah, he's in the furthest time zone. He's past Eastern. He's like the next time zone over.
For sure. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Maritime.
Yeah. Atlantic
or
time.
Atlantic,
sure.
yeah.
Sure. You know, well, that made up one that, you know, the U.S. doesn't even acknowledge. We have 4 time zones, guys, and then maybe the ones with Alaska and Hawaii, but we have 4 time zones, okay?
There you go. I think we have 6. Because I think even Newfoundland is like an hour before Atlantic.
Yes.
There's like Newfoundland is its own.
I met somebody from there. She came to a patient meeting out in here in the States,
That's
and we
cool.
started talking, and she's like, "Yeah, it's Newfoundland, Newfoundland." Like she made sure that I kept saying it correctly, and
Yeah,
yeah, Newfoundland, Newfoundland. But yeah, so yeah, and she's in a half hours. It's not in
that's the
the.
one.
That's not in a full. Yeah, 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 yeah. Hey, Fart, welcome on in.
That's
Uh,
terrific.
I
I was reading the entire name and I didn't realize that is awesome.
yeah, Fart's the best. Um, okay, so we've got the soldiers, and now Our Lady Peace is a band, correct?
Yes, Our Lady Peace is they were a very big like hard rock band, bordering emo before emo was like a thing.
Okay.
Um, band. They were from Ontario, but they were really, really big in Canada.
Mhm.
Um, and I picked them for a couple of reasons. When I was over in the UK touring, I was doing a radio interview at one of the stations, and they took a break and they were like, "Hey, we're going to come back with Josh, but before we do, here's another band that's just getting their start out of Canada. Here's Our Lady Peace." And I was like, "This song has been out for like 5 years. Like they're playing stadiums back home." I didn't say anything, but I was like,
Right.
"This is really cool that I'm like talking on the same station that's like breaking Our Lady Peace in the UK." Um, so that was a different thing. But I've been very fortunate. I'm very much a believer that success has many fathers and mothers. I am very grateful that at different pivotal moments in my career, I've met people that have given me some of the best advice that has really shaped the kind of not only the musician and the performer that I am, but the person that I am. And I got chosen to play at Canada's Walk of Fame festival, which is a little bit like the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but Canadian actors, musicians, and artists.
Okay.
And during this event, there were a lot of really incredible people being honored and being inducted. And I got to perform, and as part of that, I got invited to a dinner that they were having for the nominees. And I went to the dinner, and I was seated at a table with the drummer from Our Lady Peace,
Wow.
Jeremy Taggart. And as down to earth as the soldiers were, Jeremy was that plus.
Oh yeah.
Like he was just like a regular dude hanging out and loved music. And when we were sitting there talking and he found out that I was a musician, he said, "Do you mind if I give you a piece of advice?" I said, "Absolutely. I would love that." Because I grew up listening to Our Lady Peace. I loved his contributions to the band.
Right.
So, yes, please, like, go for it. He says, "Make sure that you're really clear about why you're doing this." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, if you're doing this to be famous or make money, there are quicker, easier, and better ways to do both." He said, "If you're doing this because you love it, because you wake up every day and you know that if you don't do it, there's a part of you that's missing, then you're going to go far. But
Wow.
do it for the right reasons." And I've carried that with me through any of the moments in my career where it's like, whether you're, switching from one company to another or going from, I understand how the UK works. Now I'm going to figure out how the US works for whether it's radio or touring, or I go back to, okay, why am I doing this? And would I still do this if I was playing to three people a night and making $20?
Right.
If the answer is yes, then keep doing it. I'm in the right place.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've heard of Our Lady Peace. Let me see. 1997, 1992. Okay.
Yes.
So they've been
They went through a
around for a
couple of
while.
lineup changes between 92 and like they had there were a couple of really big songs that came out I think closer to like 97 early 2000s
Mhm.
when Jeremy was in the band. Um but yeah, like the I think the bass player and the singer have kind of been the same
Got it.
throughout.
Yeah, Superman's dead. That's what Slurple was
Yes.
saying. Says that it lives in their head forever. So nice.
Superman's Dead is a phenomenal song. And they have a song called Life, which is really cool. Like they did some pretty heavy stuff and they took on really heavy subject matter. Um there was a song Thief, I think it's called, which they wrote about because they once they had gotten popular, they were doing yeah, Thief. They were doing like all of these tours, and part of the tours were, I guess, Rain, the lead singer, would go into hospitals and see like kids in the hospitals. And he met this, I believe she was maybe like 10 to 13,
Mhm.
and she was diagnosed with cancer. And she, it was kind of one of those make a wish situations. And it didn't look like it was going well.
Mhm.
Um, and when he met her, you know, she explained that, you know, the cancer was in her brain, and I don't want to,
Yeah, no, it
you
just
know,
says brain.
cause any upsets,
No, it just says
but
brain tumor on Wikipedia.
yeah,
So
um, but he wrote that song for her, and like some of the words in it are some of the most, they're very heavy, but some of the most beautiful words to describe that process that I've ever heard. And just the eloquence in which he explained the situation that she was in by relating that thing to the chorus is it the line is, I can see the thief that lives inside of your head. And
yeah,
it's just like that's such a brilliant way of putting it.
yeah,
Um, and so they did a lot of stuff in that vein, and they went to places that a lot of other people didn't go at the time.
yeah. No, that's fascinating. I didn't know the premise of that song at all, and that's really a interesting way, a positive, interesting way to explain something that's just so emotional.
Very much so.
Um, but yeah, so sat next to the drummer, huh?
Yep. It was one of those, you know, I really feel like as much as we try and control life, life kind of has this different plan.
Mm-hmm.
And usually my plan and life's plan end up in the same place, but we have very different ideas of how to get there. Um, and you know, I've kind of learned over the last little bit to like not only accept it, but to find the joy in it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you open yourself up to that idea that like, oh, okay, you know, there are certain things that at least I believe that everybody has a calling. Everybody has that thing inside of them that lights them up in a way that nothing else does. And when you follow that, and when you really give that a voice, you find yourself in situations constantly where you're like, how did I get here? This is really cool, but I have no idea how I got here.
Right. Wow. Are they still? Yeah, they're still active.
Oh yeah.
That's crazy. Um. Okay. Spinal Tap. Let's talk.
Spinal Tap.
Let's talk about that. You said band movie.
Yes. So Spinal Tap is a the band in itself. This is how insanely brilliant these three were. I think it was Henry Shearer and two other guys. They were all American comedians, and they had been on their own shows, and they had done like, I think Harry Shearer or Henry was 7 or 8 different voices on The Simpsons. Um, but they all had their own careers, and they got together when The Last Waltz came out, and when all of these like rockumentaries started to surface.
Mm-hmm.
They got together, they learned how to play their instruments. And when I say they learned how to play their instruments, I mean that they actually recorded an album during a time when you couldn't just use auto tune and like dub over things. Like they actually learned how to play instruments well enough that they could record music. sing music in British accents, and they created this mockumentary film called Spinal Tap, which followed this heavy metal band called Spinal Tap
Mm-hmm.
through the making of their new record, Smell the Glove. And it shows the band's decline in Western society because they're very heavy rock, misogynistic, and they do a lot of these things that, like, almost like making fun of Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin and all of these things, but through the lens of this band that's trying to be cool and is having a lot of trouble figuring out who they are.
Wow.
And I love this film, partly because my dad introduced it to me, and I'm very close with my dad, and he has such an incredible and unique sense of humor that when he is like, Josh, you got to see this movie, or you got to, like, I got to watch this with you, I know that I'm going to enjoy it. And I liked Spinal Tap growing up. And then when I became a musician and actually started touring, I loved Spinal Tap. There were so many situations that I was in that reminded me of things that happened in the movie. And the best one was when we were on the Soldiers tour, and we were it was the last show that we were playing in Scotland before we drove down to England, and it was in Motherwell, Scotland. And everybody, as we're getting to the venue, is ranting and raving about how awesome the new renovations to this venue are. And we get there after doing some radio stuff, and so the Soldiers are already there, and their tour manager meets us at the door and is like, "Let me take you down to your green room." I'm like, "Cool, thanks." And we were like talking and having a good time and blah blah blah. And he takes me down like 3 flights of stairs, through some doors, and we're all hanging out. We're laughing and joking. I'm getting my guitar out of the case, and then I go, "Okay, cool. Like, I'm ready for sound check whenever you guys are." And he goes, "Great." And he walks out of the dressing room with us, and he stops. He kind of looks around for a second, and then he starts walking again. And I'm like, "Okay, cool." Like, he knows where he's going. And remember, I said at the beginning of the story, they were renovating.
Right.
So they had put in a whole new sound system, new seats, and everything upstairs. And they had just finished repainting the green rooms and the backstage area. But they had yet to put up the signs that tell you how to get to the stage.
Oh no.
So we're walking backstage, and we end up in a broom closet. We end up in a balcony overlooking the stage. And then we go a different route and end up in the same balcony. And I have no idea how this is happening, but I'm busting a gut because all I can think about is Spinal Tap. And there's a part in the movie where they get to Cleveland and they're playing a show in Cleveland, and they're trying to get to the stage, and they're so excited to be in Cleveland that as they're going, they're like, "Cleveland, we love you, Cleveland." And they're walking to the stage, and they get to the broom closet 7 or 8 different ways, and they can't find their way onto the stage. And so as we're walking backstage with the tour manager, all I'm doing is yelling, "Cleveland, we love you, Cleveland." It took us about half an hour to get to the stage.
Oh my God.
But we were blue in the face by the time we got up there. We were laughing so hard.
Oh my
It was
God.
fantastic.
That's a great story too. Oh wow. Yeah, I've heard of Spinal Tap. I'm just not very cultured person when it comes
It's a
to
very specific movie,
yeah.
like very specific. And I think
That's
they actually got together, the 3 guys got back together. There was a big fundraising concert that they did not too long ago. I think it was the second or third Live Aid that they did
okay.
when they like rebooted the charity event, and Spinal Tap was actually one of the bands
That's
that played
crazy.
in the UK.
Yeah, 1992, 2001, 2007, 2009, 2019.
Yeah.
By the way, Alchemytation is trying to show you his cranked to 11 emote for Spinal
Oh,
Tap.
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Alchemytation. We just became best friends.
Yeah, you guys have a lot in common.
This is happening.
Yeah. Um Okay, interesting. So, yes. Let's Okay, let's talk about raccoons.
Yes.
What's up with raccoons? This is usually on people's like list.
So raccoons are adorable when they're young. I guess my beef isn't necessarily with raccoons. It's raccoons pretend like they don't have opposable thumbs.
Yeah.
They constantly pretend that they are animals, and they are so much more advanced than that. And they don't let anybody know about it until you put all of your food waste in the bin and you lock it with 7 or 8 bungee cords. And you get up the next morning and you find that somehow they were able to take off the bungee cords, get into it, and spread your food all over your driveway. So I don't know if they're pretending that they don't have opposable thumbs, if they're actually like the next, if they're actually the ones that taught people how to build the pyramids. I don't know. But they are so much smarter than they let on, and I don't know if it's them or if it's like all of the people that sell you the waste bins that like hold classes for the raccoons on how to open them afterwards. I don't know. But either way, raccoons, they're on my list.
Oh my god. Somebody please clip that. That was amazing.
Thank you.
I love it. Okay, so um yeah, like I said, it's usually on people's lists of good things, but I get what you're saying. I'm trying to figure out the opposable thumb thing. Thumb thing.
I'm telling you, we had to like they made 4 or 5 different versions of the food waste bin in Toronto. And this one now has like a crank that you have to lock because the raccoons were just getting into them at all times. Like this thing actually has a lock on it. And the raccoons are still, I kid you not, when we got these bins, my dad was like, yep, raccoons aren't going to be able to get into them because it locks. We found the bin tipped over, open the
Wow.
next day. The raccoons had figured out that if they push the bin over at a certain velocity, the lock would snap open and the lid would fly out.
Oh my god.
Like, I don't know how they do it, but they figure it out and they're not fooling me.
They're not fooling
They're
anyone.
not fooling me.
No,
No.
no, no.
There are some that they've been able to fool, but I've got my eye on them.
We have a local game where we drive around at 3 a.m. on Saturday night looking for tipped trash cans and play raccoon or drunk kid.
It's a difficult game to play sometimes, Info. It's a difficult game because like it could be either. It's a 50-50 either time.
Yeah. They're unkind to kittens? Oh no.
Oh.
That's sad. I don't want to hear any more about that fart.
Yeah. No, they're survivors.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tell me why you don't like fish.
So it's funny. I like fish as a pet. I love fish like when you're on a vacation and you're swimming with fish. Not in the, gangster reference, but in like the regular, like actually swimming in the ocean with fish.
Right.
I like fish and chips. I don't mind fish sticks. I like sushi. I can't for some reason eat like baked or like cooked fish. I can't do it. I don't know what it is. There is something that when it's like taken out of the oven or taken off of a grill, that it just becomes completely unappetizing to me. I'm not sure why. I can do it raw. I can do it smoked. I can do it in dip. I just can't do it when it's like, here's a salmon steak that's been grilled. Put this
Okay.
in the oven for you on broil. I'm like, yeah, no, that's okay.
Just give it to me raw. I'll take my
Yep,
tuna raw, please.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're big sushi fans here on the channel. Big sushi fans.
Nice.
So what's your favorite type of fish then?
I really like salmon. Really like salmon. Smoked salmon is great.
Mm-hmm.
Love a good like breakfast brunch option. And like a good spicy salmon roll. I'm down for that.
Do you get Philadelphia rolls up there? Do you know what that is?
I do know what a Philadelphia roll is, and that is delicious.
I can hawk down like a million Philadelphia rolls. Like they're one of my absolute favorites.
They are fantastic.
And the other thing I was gonna say was eat it raw and then fish and there's a dish called hamachi kama, and it's
Mm.
yellowtail collar, and it is grilled, but it's not fishy because
I
it's.
actually think I've tried this.
Do you not like it?
I actually do.
It's so
I
so
actually do.
good. It's so good. Like with the place that we used to get it, only it used to have two of them per week or
Wow,
something along those lines because they got like a really big yellowtail, and so we would try to go ahead and snag it as fast as we could.
that's awesome.
Yeah. Oh my god, so good.
That
Okay,
is awesome.
fish done. We're done with that because I'll just keep talking about fish. What about chicken wings? It's on your faves.
Love chicken wings. I absolutely love chicken wings. I, you know, I, I have this thing with food where if I have something that is the same flavor for an extended period of time, I will actually become less hungry.
Mhm.
Even if I haven't like had my fill of it yet, I will stop eating it because it's almost like my taste buds get bored.
Right.
Um, so chicken wings are like the perfect meal for me because you can get, I'll take a pound that's this flavor and a pound that's this flavor. And like, I have a very healthy appetite, but if something starts to taste the same after a certain point, I can't finish it. So like wings are fantastic because there are so many different flavor profiles, so many different sauces that you can add to it. And I know they're chicken fingers, but when they do like the sauced and tossed boneless wings,
Mhm.
those are my favorite. Those are
Nice.
terrific.
See, I like them on the bone, but
They're terrific on the
I
bone.
don't like spicy things.
That
So
makes
mine
sense.
is just barbecue or like the Parmesan
Uh,
garlic or honey mustard. Oh my god. The
yeah.
best wings I ever got in my entire life was in Boston area. It was
Mm,
I can't think of the town, but it was basically right Amherst
interesting.
and they had these honey mustard wings that were like it was like a white orange sauce on
Oh,
them. Oh my god, mwah. I'll never have
nice.
any. I've peaked. I don't think I'll ever have any wings that are that good ever again because it was fantastic. So if you're
That's
ever in
awesome.
Amherst, check
I will
them
have to
out.
check that
Look
out.
for them because they're damn good. We're talking about food. Tell me about tortellini.
That is my favorite shape of pasta
Mm-hmm.
for sure. Specifically because you can put like ground meat in it. And as a kid, my mom uh ate strictly like red sauce Italian when she was pregnant with me,
Right.
as what she told me. And that is like my go-to comfort food. I could live off of meat tortellini with tomato sauce for the rest of my life and be totally happy. Like, absolutely love it.
They're like little wontons. They're like little
They are pretty
yeah,
much, yeah.
the Italian wonton.
And they're like they're just the perfect size that like they fit on your fork and fit in your mouth no problem. It's not
Right.
like the big ravioli squares where you got to try and figure out how to bite them and then
Mm-hmm.
everything falls out.
Yeah.
It's like no, it's like,
It's a little pocket, little perfect.
exactly.
Yeah. Mine is the egg noodle or the
Lovely.
shell.
Shells are good
I
too.
do like some shells, but the egg noodles are my favorite because we do buttered noodles,
Ah,
and
yeah,
that is just it's so. I just like the texture. But tortellinis
absolutely.
for like a food, like I'm talking about pasta, but like for a food, tortellinis are like the bomb. They're
Love
so
them.
good. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do
Love
you
them.
so just besides like meat and stuff, do you do cheese? Do you do
Every so often for sure. Yeah, like the like good like ricotta, basil, garlic filled, like that's fantastic.
yeah. Yeah. What other Italian foods do you like?
All of them. I love pizza, any
Oh,
kind of pizza. I'm a big fan of like chicken parm. My favorite is like a good arrabbiata sauce, like a good spicy sauce or a puttanesca sauce.
mm-hmm.
Those are fantastic. Um, I like a traditional, it's not ketchup pepe, it's the other one. Um, carbonara. I
Oh
love a
yeah.
traditional carbonara when they do it with the egg.
Mhm.
Phenomenal.
I know, and Fazar, I was waiting for you to say something. So pizza is the secret word, by the way. You know
Ah,
how Pee Wee
very
Herman
nice.
has the secret word? The pizza is the secret word on the channel. I'm a pizza snob connoisseur.
Lovely.
I respect all pizzas, but I do not like all pizzas. I cannot
I feel
eat.
that.
I cannot eat like a Domino's or a Pizza Hut unless it's like barbecue chicken and, and cheese with onions. Like to me, that's not a pizza. That's like something else. I don't associate that with pizza.
Absolutely.
But where's the best pizza you've ever had?
That's a really, really tough one. Because Toronto over the last couple of years has like really upped its game
Mm-hmm.
pizza wise. Um, I will say that there is a small family run pizza place in Toronto in the middle of Little Italy, and it is one of the best pies that I have ever had. They also do
Yes.
veal sandwiches and meatball sandwiches, and like they do the whole like spicy peppers on it and the whole business,
Mm-hmm.
which is phenomenal in itself. But their pizzas are so good, and they were in business when my parents were dating.
Wow.
Um, and it's funny. It's called Batondos. And I'm actually there's a TikTok guy that rates pizzas. He does like the one bite pizza thing, and he was actually there when he came to Toronto. Um, but the place, the grandfather opened up the shop like a long time ago, won the lottery, and continued to run the shop. Like didn't update the building, didn't update the oven, nothing. Like the same stuff. And then he won the lottery a second time
No way.
and like stayed the same. The place is exactly the same as it was in the 80s. Um, Menu hasn't changed, the back room hasn't changed, nothing. And it is the same family that has run this place for generations. Same recipe, and the grandfather, he had come over from Italy, so he spoke like a little bit of English, but not a ton. And so one of the sons at the time that my parents went there when they were just starting to date, was taking their order, and my mom goes, "We should get a medium pizza." And my dad was like, "Well, it's just two of us. We should get a small." And she was like, "No, no, no, medium pizza. Like, trust me, I'll be able to eat it. Medium pizza." He's like, "I really think we should get a small." And the grandfather overhears it, and he comes over and he goes, like in broken English, he says, you want to be right? You want to be happy?" And my dad looks at him and says, "We'll take a medium."
Yep.
And he goes, "Good answer." That was all that they said to each other.
That's
But
amazing.
ever since then, that's kind of been their spot. And at the first album release party I ever had, for the first record I ever put out, um, we played this place and we packed it out. And my dad figured out that it was across the street from Batondos.
Mm-hmm.
And so after my set, while I was packing up, and everybody was kind of like we were doing the whole, talking to people that were there and the team and all of that stuff, he went out and got a pizza, brought it into the back of the place, and was like, "Hey." When I came back to drop off my stuff, he was like, "Hey, grab a slice." I was like, "This is amazing."
Oh my gosh.
So
Oh, full
yeah,
circle. That's so great.
it was cool.
Wow. So how many records have you put out now?
Three full length records, two EPs. One of them was a live EP,
Wow.
that we recorded in a beautiful theater in Guildford in the UK, and a whole bunch of singles.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Have you ever been to New York City?
I have.
Have you ever had New York City pizza?
Oh my gosh. It's something else over there. You could throw a stone and hit a good pizza place in New
Yeah.
York.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's where the best pizza comes from, right there.
absolutely.
Now, I can't say for other countries, so you're safe with your pizzeria up there. And I would go ahead and eat there. From You're making me drool. I would eat up there.
It's
I
fantastic.
trust your judgment. I feel like you would know a good pizza, and so I trust your judgment. But
There are a couple things I pride myself on. Italian food is definitely up there. That's
yeah, yeah, for sure. Is Josh a solo artist with a backing band or in a band? Sorry, I'm not
That's
familiar.
a great question. I was actually in a couple of bands in high school that lasted like 5 minutes. You know, high school bands.
Yeah.
And the first one, it was like everybody wanted to be the lead guitar player, and so I didn't know how that would work. Um, but it was funny. I had started releasing, like writing my own stuff and working on my own material, and this band of kids that were older than I were, like they were in university already. They were like, "Hey, we heard you singing. We want you to be our singer." And I was like, "Great." We rehearsed a couple times. It was terrific. And then they were like, "Yeah, we just want to do covers." And I was like, "Yeah, but like original music though."
Yeah.
And they were like, "No, we want to do covers." And then I went off to university, got on this whole journey of writing songs, met a producer, made a record, and the whole band thing just kind of went out the window because I started releasing stuff, and they were like, "Well, what are you releasing it as?" I was like, "Well, it's me, so Josh Turk." And from there, I then met a bunch of great guys in the UK that I toured with as a backing band, guys in Nashville that like I call on when I'm touring in the South or in the States. And same with here in Canada. I've got a bunch of guys that I tour around with, and it's great because you get to hear all of these incredible players, and you get to hear their take on the stuff that you put on the record,
I just
which is
searched you
really
on
cool.
Wikipedia. You're on
Oh, did you?
Yeah, you're on Wikipedia. I'm just trying to find you. Hold on.
Well, that's very cool.
Musical credits. Here's to Change. Background vocals.
Yeah, so Brandy Zidane is a phenomenal singer. Lives in Nashville. She's a blues singer and is absolutely phenomenal. And when we were making Here's to Change, the producer I was working with was also working with her, and she did background vocals on that song Here's to Change. Um, and when we recorded that, we kind of came back for a holiday break, and John Oates, the guy who introduced me to the producer, was like, "Hey, like, how's everything going?" And I was like, "Great." And he's like, "Do you have anything that I could hear?" And I sent him a couple songs, and he's like, "Would you mind if I sang on a couple of these? Did some background vocals?" So I was like, "Yeah,
You can take
that,
over the song. I'll do background
that'd be
vocals
great."
for you. How about that?
And it was the craziest thing because like that January, I'm back in Nashville, and Teddy has Brandy's part on the song, and then John comes in and he's standing in the booth, and I'm sitting at the console with Teddy, looking in at John singing words to a song that I wrote. And like I'm just having this complete out of body experience. And all of a sudden I realized the music has stopped, and he looks at me and he goes, "How was that? Was that good?" And I was like, "Was that good? That was fantastic."
Right.
Like in my head, I was going like, "You could have made monkey noises on this thing," like
Right.
that would have been terrific. Like
A
this would have been the best
plus.
day ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, that's funny. Wow. Brandy Zan, Canadian musician, writer, multi-instrumentist, and record producer in Nashville, Tennessee. Interesting.
Yeah, I forgot that Brandy was Canadian as well. She made the move down there.
El Dorado, Arkansas.
Yes.
Tell me about
So
it.
talking about some of the places that music can take you. And Alcommutation. I am from Toronto, Toronto, Canada, born and raised in the six. But El Dorado. So uh, get this opportunity to open up for Kevin Costner and his country band, Modern West. And they've got this tour where they're playing a show in Midland, Texas, and then driving from Midland, Texas to El Dorado, Arkansas. And I'm like, I've never been to Texas. I've never been to Arkansas. This is the coolest thing ever. I'm in. So my brother Ryan, who plays with me occasionally and also writes a lot of this stuff with me, A lot of the stuff past like the first record, I started co-writing with him, and it was great. We come from two very different worlds of music, but like it's one of those creates something better than the sum of its parts kind of
Right.
deal. And so that's been awesome. And so Ryan comes with me, and we're doing like a duo acoustic thing to open up for Kevin. And we fly into Dallas Fort Worth from Nashville,
Mhm.
and we get a car and we start driving. Texas is one of the biggest states that I have ever been in my entire life.
Yep.
And not just from the perspective of there are so many people and so many things, but you can go 3 hours
Yeah.
without seeing anything. Like no cell service, literally just land, trees, and the occasional oil rig. Like that's it. And so we're driving, and we're driving through this country that is like nothing I've ever seen before. And the guy that we have who's touring us has been like, he toured with Springsteen and he toured with Stevie Ray Vaughan, and he's a wonderful guy, great photographer, but he's also a tour manager. And so he was taking us around, and he was like, "Hey, Josh, open your window." So I opened my window, and there was just this like incessant humming that was coming out of the ground.
Wow.
And I was like, "What is that?" He's like, "It's rattlesnakes." I was like, "Oh, good. Okay. I'm not going to step out of the car."
Yeah.
But we drive through, and there's like, you go from trees to really small trees to very prickly looking bushes to nothing. Like just sand.
Wow.
And we get to Midland, and it's just sand. And we realize after the Midland show, we've got 24 hours before the show in Arkansas. So we drive, instead of driving towards Arkansas, we drive about 3 hours past Midland, almost to the border of New Mexico, to the Sand Dunes National Park. And we record videos there and all of this. So we're in the middle of what looks like the Sahara Desert.
Right.
And it's so cool. And then we drive from there all the way to Arkansas. And the climate, when you pass over the state line into Arkansas, changes like that. Like you go from desert to swamp in
Yep.
3 seconds.
Yep.
And we get to Arkansas, and Joe, the photographer, is like, "Hey, let's step out and do some photos because this is really cool." And we're at like this little like almost like a dock, but it's really just like a cement thing that goes into a swamp for boats.
Mhm.
So we get there, and he's like, "Let's take some pictures." Blah blah blah. So I go out there, and my back is to the swamp, and I'm looking at Joe, and he's taking pictures, and then all of a sudden I see him go. He takes a couple more, and then he's like, "Okay, cool, let's go." I'm like, "Joe, what's going on?" And he shows me in the camera that as we were taking pictures, this gator just like lifted its head up, and it was like 2 feet from where I was standing. And so I was like, "Oh, okay, great.
Oh my
Gators and
gosh.
rattlesnakes. This is one hell of a tour."
Yeah, for real.
And then yeah, it was awesome. Like we got there, and just like the town of El Dorado was so beautiful and so cool. It was one of those like really really old America towns. Like it was built with a town square, and everything surrounded the town square, and there was a railroad that kind of divided the outskirts of town. It was just beautiful. And the theater was, we had gone from this like really renovated theater with state of the art equipment and like soundproofing everything to this theater that hadn't been renovated since like the 70s
Wow.
and was absolutely beautiful. Just like
Yeah.
dark wood and resonant in the whole 9 yards.
17,000 people, started with just 443. I love looking at the census. This is one of my favorite
Oh yeah.
things. And the conference center they have, the Rialto, is that where you're talking about?
I think it was, yeah. Yeah, that looks real familiar.
It's crazy. crazy. Yeah. The all the highways
It,
and stuff. That's crazy.
it's
So
a cool place.
so like were there hotels? Was it somebody's like bed and breakfast? Where did you stay?
Yeah, so so the band had a van, like a tour bus. So they were sleeping on the tour bus, and we found a Holiday Inn for a really good price. And again, we're not from El Dorado. We have no idea where this is. We found a Holiday Inn that had a good price, and so we were like, great. So we pull into the hotel, and there's like it was crazy because the lobby was kind of this open air concept lobby, but it looked into the pool.
Okay.
Um, and there was like a glassed in indoor pool that was on a lower level. So you had to go from the lobby down to get the elevator to go up to the rooms. So we're looking in, and I'm checking in, and Joe's kind of like looking at the pool. And then for some reason he comes back and he is like ghost white. I'm like, that's weird. Like, what's going on? And he's like, okay, you got the keys? Great. And he's like shuffling us into the elevator. And as he's walking into the elevator, this gentleman comes out of the pool area, and he just kind of looks at us and then walks away. But no one else notices, but I notice that he's got a teardrop tattoo. And those mean something
Yeah.
when you've been in prison.
Right.
Um, and so I see that, and I now understand why Joe is nervous. And so he's going, and Ryan goes into the room, and he pulls me aside and he says, hey, listen, I didn't want to freak out your brother, but you are not to leave this hotel room until I come and get you. If you need to go somewhere, you call me, and I will walk down the hall. I will be here at your room. I was like, Joe, we're not going anywhere. Like, don't worry
Right.
about it. So that night, I was like, hey, Ryan, why don't we like order some food to the room? He was like, okay. So we ordered food, and we just kind of stayed in the hotel room. And then that morning, once we had gotten to the venue, which was on the other side of the train tracks, we I told him the story because we weren't staying there that night. So I just told him, I was like, yes, so
Right.
this happened. He was like, okay.
Oh man.
But
Wow.
this is the stuff that you collect on the road. Like, these are the
Yeah.
stories, you know?
No, I think that's great. Um uh okay, the government cool house.
Yes. This was the start of my like musical education. As far as
No, this
I
is
had grown up, yeah, that's
oh, it's a nightclub. Okay,
yeah, the Cool House is like another name for the government because it's like a big
got it.
warehouse industrial space. It's now become, I think, a grocery store and apartments, but
Mm.
um, it used to be this like it had three different live music venues attached to this complex.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this was where I went to go see a lot of those like underground shows before bands like Fall Out Boy became huge. They came into the government and the Cool House and played with, it was Motion City Soundtrack, Newfound Glory, and Berlin, and Fall Out Boy. And then it was Fall Out Boy, or yeah, Fall Out Boy, All American Rejects, um, and for some reason, Motion City Soundtrack was also opening up that show as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then the government was where I saw Plain White Tees.
Okay.
And so a lot of these early shows, these were like the formative years of me figuring out music and me
Right.
figuring out the way that I wanted to write. And I had had these experiences with, like my dad grew up a very big Springsteen fan. And so I grew up a big Springsteen fan. And I remember seeing him at like the big baseball stadium that we had in Toronto. And I remember seeing Paul McCartney at the big baseball stadium. And it was like, however many 80,000 seats or whatever. But this was like you could reach out and touch the band
Right.
like at this place. It made the thing accessible.
Very
It made the
intimate.
dream it made the dream a reality.
Right.
So I was like, okay, there are steps to this. You know what I mean? Like the stadium is a step, but there's like other steps towards that.
Right.
And yeah, that was the first time that I really kind of felt like I was part of a music scene that was my own and
Nice.
felt like I was discovering things before other people were or
Okay.
at the same time that other people were. And that was very cool.
Wow. Yeah, we had a lot of these types of club areas in Jersey, and you're playing at one. Well, no, you're playing across the street, but the Stone Pony is one of them,
Oh,
right?
Stone Pony is such an incredible venue.
It's so crazy though how like tight it is. It's very intimate. Like
Oh, for sure.
you, the few times that I've been there, my brother played there in a band years ago. And I just stood in the back. I was like, this is too there's too many people. Like I'm gonna just hug the
Oh,
back
for
wall.
sure.
But it's a beautiful venue and there's so much history in it, just so much history in it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, we have these little areas that all these bands came from, and um, one of the more famous people that I've met is actually Bruce Springsteen. New Jersey and whatever. Um,
Absolutely.
I was I was at a what was it like a shop? It was like a shop right or something. Like it was or Trader Joe's or we were shopping and I was young and he was there. My mom like freaked out. She was like, "Oh my god, that's Bon Jovi," and I was like, "Okay." I'm like 7. That's fine. That's great. And she's like, "No, we have to meet Bon Jovi." So she's like, "Hi, I just wanted to say I'm a big fan, and this is my daughter, and she likes to sing, and we just want to say we're really big fans." And he's like, "Cool, thank you." Like he was really genuine and nice about it and everything, but he's also like, "Let me go on my way."
It's one of the things that I've heard about him so much is that like he never like got the New Jersey out of him.
Right.
Like he was always like, no, this is my home and this is my town and these are my people and like
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go to the grocery store and I'm gonna go to the bar and I'm gonna hang out with
Yep.
like
And
that part of it I found really cool.
yeah, he's a cool dude. It's funny that they have like where's Waldo? They do like where's Bruce? They track
That's
him,
awesome.
you know. Um okay, cool. So the government and Cool House. Tell me your love of sandwiches.
So this
Or
is
is that a
actually something.
song?
No, no, no. Sandwiches is it's the food, but
Okay.
it came out of again being on the road. We we had we were traveling from Nashville to Atlanta, which should take about 2 hours,
Mhm.
and we got stuck in traffic. And so this 2 hour journey took like 5 hours,
Wow.
and I had no food in the car, and we were supposed to play a show, and I was so hungry by the time I got to the venue that I was like, I've got to eat something before I do sound check. And there wasn't enough time to like eat and be like re-energized. And so I
Right.
was like, never again. I am never going on the road with no food in my bag.
Right.
So the next tour that we have, we're driving again. It was from Nashville to Alabama, like Birmingham, and then Birmingham to Atlanta, Georgia.
Mhm.
And so as we're driving, again, I've learned from the first time. So I've got like 3 sandwiches in my bag that I've packed because I'm like, I'm going to have a fridge in the room. So if I don't eat all 3 on the drive, that's fine.
Right.
But I'm going to have sandwiches. So I pull out a half a sandwich. Like I break them up into halves. So I've got about 6 halves in my bag. And I pull out one and I start eating. And I don't realize, but my drummer is like looking over and he's watching me eat the sandwich. And then like an hour later, I'm like, I'm still hungry. I'm gonna pull out the second part of the sandwich, and I start eating it. And he's kind of looking like he looks over again and he sees me with the sandwich. And then we go back, we drop our stuff off at the hotel, and we're like headed to the venue. This is a couple hours later, and again, out of my bag comes another sandwich, and he goes, "I don't understand. Are you making these in the back of the car?" And so I bust a gut laughing. And from then on, they were like, he's the sandwich king. He's like Mr. Sandwich because I always had sandwiches with me. when I started doing Twitch, I told that story to one of my I told the story to my community, and one of my mods, Peter, um, took on that thing and was like, "You should go on Davey's Eating a Sandwich show."
Yeah.
And so when I did, I was like, "Well, it's the sandwich show, so I'm gonna eat a sandwich with Davey on the show." So we ate a sandwich together, and I think I was one of the first guests that actually came on with a sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
And then from then on, Peter just started calling me the Sandwich King, and that just kind of stuck for the community. So I became the Sandwich King.
Josh the Sandwich King. What
There you
kind
go.
of are you talking about? Italian subs, or what are we talking
I
about for
love a good
sandwiches?
Italian sub. I love a good Italian sub, especially for like a cold sandwich. I
Yeah.
love that. Um, I mean, I'm really, I, 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 I tend not to like pick and choose favorites of the sandwiches. I try and spread the love evenly.
Okay.
But Italian is definitely up there. I love a good meatball subs do not travel well, so I don't
No.
travel with those, but they're great sandwiches. Usually like a breaded chicken, like a chicken cutlet sandwich is great,
Mm-hmm.
especially with like some chipotle mayo or a little like buffalo sauce on there. It's terrific. Um, you can't go wrong with like a roast beef dip, but
Right.
again, not
Not
necessarily like a
traveling.
travel sandwich.
Right.
I'm paninis. I do a bunch of them. Like anything on the menu that sounds good, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, I'll
can
try
get
it.
behind that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Josh
Good
never
club
met a s-
sandwich, you
Josh
know.
never met a sandwich he didn't like.
Never met a sandwich I haven't liked.
That's crazy. Yeah, I guess do you eat like chicken salad sandwiches?
I do.
Yeah, those are my probably one of my favorite sandwiches right now.
Those are
Um,
delicious.
yeah, and then I'm not a big Arby's fan in any sense, but I once upon a time had a um sorry if you hear fireworks. It's 4th of July tomorrow, so you might
Oh,
hear
that
some
makes sense. Yeah.
explosions. um but the chicken salad sandwich that they have has grapes and had pecans, and they were like
Nice.
oh my gosh, it was the best chicken sandwich I've ever had. So I was like, oh man, Arby's, you have a place in my heart for a good chicken salad sandwich.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
We do a version of that at the house too. My dad started making these chicken salad sandwiches where he'd put like dried dates
Oh,
in,
yum.
and then he'd crush walnuts and put those in as well.
Oh, that sounds so
Yeah,
good.
it's something else.
I love a good chicken salad. Um, Tell me about Stratocaster.
Yeah. So the Strat was I believe it was the second guitar that Fender released, like the second electric, or the second iteration of the electric guitar, because they had the Telecaster for years, um, which was like kind of the standard of playing for, and it still is the standard of playing for a lot of country stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and bluegrass and rockabilly and that kind of thing. Um, but the Strat was supposed to compete with the Les Paul and the humbucking guitars. It was supposed to provide musicians with a lot more choice, a lot more ability to like tap in and out of different pickups and different settings.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I put it on there is because the first ever electric guitar that I ever got was a Sunburst Mexican Strat,
Wow.
and that guitar is like over 20 years old, and I still use that as like my predominant electric guitar whenever I'm recording. It features pretty heavily on a lot of the singles that I released this past year,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the stuff that I'm still making. So like it's really cool that I constantly keep going back to this guitar. It looks exactly like that picture right
Oh
there, actually.
yeah.
Um, that's pretty much what it looks like.
It's
Um,
pretty.
a- and so yeah, like that's kind of been the guitar for a long time.
So, how did you go from acoustic to electric? Was it an easy switch or?
Not really. I didn't realize that the acoustic strings that I was using, because because I get so emotionally involved in my playing when I'm on stage,
Hmm.
I tend to have a very heavy hand
Oh,
when I'm
okay.
strumming. And I like it's funny because when people that I knew prior to seeing me play live come and see a show, they go like, "You're like a totally different person up there." Like, there's a switch that happens, and it's just the energy that I feel like from the room, and I can't help but like
Right.
it's like all it takes over.
Yeah.
And so with that, like my entire being goes into the song, and that includes my strumming arm, unfortunately, for my guitar.
Hmm.
So I started using like custom light gauge strings, like some really, really light strings, and they would break every 2 or 3 shows. So I started to go heavier and heavier. And so with that, when I started to switch over to the electric and I would start to play like some of my, whether it was the producer I was working with or, my buddies who predominantly play electric guitars, those strings felt like noodles to me. Like they were
Yeah.
so loose and light that I was like taking the guitar out of tune every time I would touch it. So I realized that the key to me being able to play guitar was like, yeah, exactly, alchemmutation, like playing 12s, like almost doing what Stevie Ray Vaughan did and just like putting the heaviest gauge electric guitar strings that you could on this thing. And to me, that felt more like I was playing an acoustic. So
Interesting.
yeah, it was just kind of learning stuff like that helped me make that transition. But um, yeah, I'm predominantly a rhythm guitar player as well because I do a lot of the singing. I can solo like, and I do solo a little bit here and there. Um, but yeah, I'm predominantly a rhythm guitar player, so it's important for me to be able to like shape the chords and hit them in a way that kind of feels familiar.
Right. Right, right, right. Wow. So do you prefer acoustic over electric or vice versa?
To be honest, I love the sound of a good, you know, crunchy like tube amp style distorted guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So I love electrics. I love them not just as instruments but as art too.
Right.
The different colors, the shapes, the way that like it's almost like depending on the mood that you're in and depending on the style of playing that you play, different guitars look different and sound different depending on the genre of music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I love them from that standpoint. And all of my heroes played like electric guitars. So yeah, it's always like been a dream to like play those, and occasionally I'll play them uh, live as well. But it just happened to be that the style of music that I write and the type of stuff that I do, a lot of the time lends itself to acoustic guitar, and so I ended up playing that predominantly.
Yeah, and it lends itself to a folkier sound no matter what you do.
For sure.
And that's one of my favorite genres right there.
Feel that.
Um, okay, tell me about Thunder Road.
Thunder Road. So this one, there's a lot of really interesting stuff about this song, but I remember being in like grade 1 or 2 and sitting in the back of my dad's car as he's driving me to school. Um, and I remember hearing the song, and I had listened to it a bunch before that, but it was like I was hearing it for the first time. And in that moment, the the whole story of the song about being about like this guy who's singing about cars and singing about getting out, all of a sudden I heard the story from the perspective of the person that he's talking about. Screen door slams, Mary's dress waves like a vision, she dances across the porch as the radio plays, Roy Orbison singing for the lonely. Hey, that's me and I want you only, don't turn me home again, I just can't wait, I just can't face myself alone again. I heard the loneliness. I heard the desperation.
Yeah.
I felt it. And it was the first time that I had clued into that. And I was really young, so I didn't really know what to do with that. And I started crying in the back seat. Um, and that was the first introduction that I had to the power of a good song because depending on the mood that you're in and depending on where you're at in your life, a good song takes on completely different meanings depending on which angle you look at it from.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started writing my own stuff, I went back to Springsteen and I started listening to his stuff, and that song became a really big song for me. And so many years later, not many, but years later,
Right.
I was at an event in Toronto, and the I guess person at the event who was doing the fundraiser was Max Weinberg, the drummer for Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band.
Mm-hmm.
And he plays and it's great and the whole thing, and then at the end of the his set, I notice he's standing over at the bar and he's just finishing a conversation. And again, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Right.
So I beeline over to him, and Max, my name's Josh, singer-songwriter from right here in Toronto. Oh my gosh, it's so like that's so cool. You know, are you in school? What do you do? And he talked to me for like half an hour. And right before he left, I gave him a CD, like a demo that I had made in my friend's basement. And I said it would mean a lot if you could take a listen. Let me know what you think. So he goes, yeah, and he took the CD, and I was just thrilled that he took it. A couple weeks later, I'm on my way to I think it was like a first year Canadian literature course at university, and I get this email from a address I don't recognize. Hey Josh, it's Max's manager. We both took a listen to your demo, and we loved what we heard. What are you doing November 11th? We want you to come and open up for us in South Orange, which is Max's hometown. So I was like, oh, I didn't go to class that day. I called my dad. I was like, you're not going to believe what just happened.
Yeah.
And so my dad and I are flying into Newark, and we're then making the drive up to South Orange to play this show. Like, and he's freaking out because he was a drummer and he was in a Springsteen cover band growing up. So he was the Mighty
Right.
Max in his band. And so Max was always a big hero for him and for me too, growing up loving this music and getting like to have that moment with my dad. And so we get to customs, and the guy goes, "So why are you here?" And all through the thing, I'm like, "Do I be honest about this? Because like I don't have a visa for this. So like, am I going to be honest about this, or am I just
Right.
going to tell him I'm visiting friends?" And I decided at the last minute, like I'm just going to tell him. And he goes, "So why are you here?" I said, "Well, I'm opening up for Max Weinberg at the South Orange Performing Arts Center." And he's not looking at me like when he asked the question, but he looks up and then he looks over at my dad, like, is he being serious? And my dad's like, he's actually being serious. And the guy was like, that's awesome. And like stamps the thing and he's like, have a good time. So anyway, we play the show with Max. He is one of the nicest guys ever, like invites us into his dressing room and like we meet everybody and we're talking like we've known each other for years. He becomes a huge mentor, and like just anytime he's in town, we end up meeting up, and it's phenomenal. He's coming back to Toronto in between shows with Bruce to do his like Max Weinberg jukebox show, and he's playing this legendary venue in Toronto. And he calls me up and he goes, "Josh, I'm playing the show. Do you want to come out?" I was like, "Yeah, that would be great." And we get to the venue. I see his manager again. We're catching up with everybody, and he pulls me aside and he goes, "Listen, so the way the shows work is people yell out songs and we just kind of play them." I
Whoa.
was like, "Wow, that's really cool." He said, "Yeah. So, would you like to come up tonight if somebody yells a Bruce Springsteen song?" Because he knows that I've grown up,
Right.
you know, I can play Springsteen like the back of my hand. I said, "Sure, that would be great." He goes, "Cool. So the first Springsteen song that somebody yells up, I'm going to introduce you." I said, "Awesome. That would be great." The place is packed. Like you can't move. And he goes, "Okay, so we're getting to that time of the show where, you know, we want to hear from you. What do you want to hear?" and without skipping a beat, like somebody who wrote this, the first thing that comes out of their mouth is Thunder Road.
Oh my gosh.
And
Oh
so
my gosh.
he looks back, and my dad looks at me, and I'm like, I guess I'm singing Thunder Road. So I get up on stage, and I actually got to sing Thunder Road with Max. It was it's one of the coolest things I've ever experienced.
That's amazing. Wow. Full circle too.
Yeah,
Wow. What an
it was
experience.
crazy.
Wow. Good for you. like,
Thank you.
like that's amazing. You deserve everything that you've gotten, and I'm like in awe that I'm even talking to you right now.
I love getting to do it. You know,
Yeah.
like I'm just I'm floored all the time when I think about just what music has led me to be able to do. Because it really was just that moment of like, not to go off on a terrible tangent here, but
Yeah.
I was in business school. I got into like this MBA program right out of high school, and was basically on track to be like, you know, management at IBM kind of idea.
Right.
Um, and got into the class, was doing well, but just like my entire life force was sucked out of me. Like I wasn't enjoying it. I didn't feel passionate about it. And I was just sitting in the like sitting in my dorm room in my first year, like just before holiday break, coming back home. And I was sitting there going like, I don't know what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I don't know what the rest of my life looks like. And I picked up my guitar and I started writing a song. And I felt more creative and more like myself in that moment than I had for the last 3, 4 months of school. And so I came home and played a holiday party or something that a buddy of mine was having. He was like, "Hey, Josh, you know, pass me a guitar." And he said, "Play something." So I did. And a mutual friend of ours was like, "Do you have like a CD I could take? That was really good." So I gave him, you know, again, the demo that I made in my buddy's basement.
Right.
And at the end of that holiday break, I was like, "Mom and Dad, I don't think I want to do business anymore. Like I'm
Right.
trying to figure out." And they were like, "Look, whatever you do, you know, just make sure that you're passionate about it, and we'll support you 100%." And I was like, "Cool, thank you." I get back to school and I get this call from that mutual friend, and he was like, "Hey, I don't know if you remember, but you gave me a CD. I I'm working in construction, and I was building a recording studio for this producer in Toronto, and I was listening to your stuff, and he overheard it and was like, 'What is that?' So I played it for him. Would you be interested in talking to him? Because I think he wants to like work with you on music."
Oh my gosh.
So I got on the phone with him, started talking to him, and he was I didn't know at the time because I wasn't up on necessarily who he was talking about and who he was.
Right.
He just sounded like a really great person. He was like, "Yeah, I'd love to meet you and, you know, talk to you about making a record together." I was like, "Great." He was British, but like a Canadian citizen. So I was like, "That's cool." Um, and I called my parents and I was like, "Hey, listen, I think I figured out what I want to do." They were like, "Okay, what do you want to do?" I said, "I want to come back to Toronto and I want to make music." And they said, "Okay. Um, how do you want to go about this?" And I was like, "Well, there's this producer that wants to work with me. I don't know too much about him, but his name is Terry Brown." And my dad's in, like, I can hear my mom on speakerphone. My dad's in the other room and he goes, "Terry Brown?" I went, "Yeah." And he goes, and he like goes, "Josh, do you know who Terry Brown is?" I said, "No." He goes, "Well, Terry Brown was a recording and like he's a producer now, but he was an engineer in the UK and worked with Jimi Hendrix and Led Zeppelin and all of these guys coming out of the UK. And then when he moved to Canada, he produced Rush
Yep.
and Amanda Marshall and like all of these huge Canadian bands." I was like, "Oh, wow. Okay, I know who that is. Like I know who Rush is. I know who Led Zeppelin is. That's
Right.
awesome."
Right.
And God bless Terry. He was basically like a musical father figure for me. Like he was the first guy that ever kind of took me under his wing, showed me the ropes, and kind of presented me with, hey, you should try to do this. Hey, you should try to do that. Why don't you go over to the UK and play a couple shows over there? I'll try and hook you up with some friends of mine that are in the business.
Wow.
And so he was awesome in that respect. Um, and so, yeah,
Dang.
it was how it all came to be.
Yeah, everything is meant to be. Yeah, the guidance you have is incredible. I completely agree, Alchemy. That's
I'm so fortunate. Like I really do feel like at every turn when that person has showed up and has like helped me learn the next step or the next phase or the um it's been awesome. And I still keep in touch with a lot of these guys, like thank
yeah.
God today. And it's great because I feel like with every passing day and every new thing that we kind of accomplish, every, next stage that we get to, I get to thank them for that.
Yeah. When you go ahead and accept your music award, you're gonna have a lot of people to thank.
I'm telling you, it's I really feel like there's no such thing as a self-made person. Everybody gets that because you got to learn, and the only way to learn is to learn by dealing with other people, by
Right.
making mistakes or by looking at other people, seeing the things they did well and also seeing their mistakes and going like, okay, I can learn something from this. And
Right.
I've just been very fortunate that the people that I've come into contact with have been so forthcoming with their experiences and their information. Because I have met people that haven't been and that have been in a position where they could give a tremendous amount of advice and insight and have just chosen to want to be on a pedestal.
Right.
And I prefer not to name those people because that's cool and like there's nothing against that, but there's something to be said for the kind of confidence and the kind of genuine love of music that people have when they're that forthcoming with like, hey, we want to see the next generation of people do well too,
Right.
you know?
If you could share your own advice for someone creating music because they have to but has no connections, what would that be? So I assume
On
had to get connections.
honestly, the the biggest thing that I found was kind of it's finding the thing that really makes you sing as a performer. I know that sounds a little funny, but there are some people that when they go online, they are just so good on live streams. Like so incredible on live streams that people are like glued to their live streams. There are some people that have the personality to be able to make a 30-second TikTok video, whether it's music related or not, and people are just riveted by it. And that's how those people create those connections.
We lost Sean
It
video real quick. Hold on.
oh, did
You
I do the
you
thing again?
yeah, you did the thing again.
I'm telling you, it's that
Oh,
oh,
there we
there we go.
go.
There we go. So there are people that, they find their people through TikTok or people that find their people through Twitch. People who find their audience, their musical group through producing. I know a lot of musicians that have found their Bruno Mars became Bruno Mars because he was writing and producing for other artists first. Um, it really depends on the thing that you feel the most like yourself doing. For me, that was always playing live. And regardless of what I'm doing or the music that I'm creating or the videos that I'm putting out, when I get the opportunity to play, that's the thing that seems for me to bring everybody like the chairs swivel and they start paying attention.
Right.
Um, and it's really the more comfortable I got being myself and the more comfortable I got writing the way that I write, putting out music that I felt emotionally connected with, whether it was on the production side of things, the way that I phrased things, whether it was popular or not, when I honed in on who I was, how I wanted my music to sound, and the person that I wanted to be on and off stage, that's when everything kind of started to change. And when I started to make those connections and I started to find those people that could help me make further connections. So definitely, you know, being yourself and being confident in the thing that you do, because there's an audience for it. I 150% believe that if you're passionate about something, there are other people on this planet that are passionate about that very thing. And that's what you're meant to create. Past that point, there are so many different organizations that are free, that offer, whether it's songwriting workshops or networking events and stuff like that, that are so amazing. Because if you meet one person at one of those events, either somebody that you can collaborate with, or somebody that's an artist that you could write for, or somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody, it's great to put yourself out there and to just be in the community, because when you're in the community, it's a very small community, no matter where you are.
Right.
And someone's going to know someone who's going to be able to help.
Absolutely. Your video went out one more time.
Did it? Wow.
Yeah. You had a very funny still shot, so I just went ahead and pressed the button so that way it didn't show again, because you were just
That's
like,
fantastic.
and it had a big old thumbs up. And I was like, okay.
I love that. I talk with my hands a lot, so it's like, it's one of those, it's inevitable.
Right.
It's going to happen like 7 or 8 more times. But
my takeaway is that I'll keep being me, because that's what I've done here on Twitch. You confirmed what I've been flirting with, so
100%.
that's great.
Commutation, 150%. And it's just continuing to be bold enough to be yourself and put yourself in positions where, regardless of what anybody in the audience is going to feel, you have the opportunity to be yourself and do the thing that you love. There were a lot of shows that I played at the beginning of my career that I should not have been in those venues. And I should not have been playing in those places.
Oh, he's in ads right now. You have about 10 seconds.
Happens. No worries. But yeah, like you gotta. It's funny. We were talking about Bruce Springsteen and Bon Jovi. The documentary that Bon Jovi has. One of the things that his manager told him is that in order to be a successful live touring band, you got to win over the black T-shirt crowd. And I loved that, because early on, when you're starting out, the choice of venue that you have is kind of limited, because some of the places that you would want to play want to see a touring history.
Right.
How do you get a touring history? You got to play the places that you can play.
Right.
And so going into these places, it's the best education for, kind of developing that confidence in yourself and what you do, because you go into bars where people don't necessarily want to listen. They just want to drink beer and, hang out with their friends.
Right.
But if you can put on a stellar show and you've got songs that you're passionate about and they can feel that, you're gonna turn some heads. And even if it's one person in the audience that you make a fan of every place you play, you have no idea who that one person knows or who that one person is going to tell.
Right.
The first live show I ever played outside of the camp thing that I did was at an Irish bar in the Beaches area of Toronto. And there were a couple of guys in the place. Like, it was very packed, and a couple of guys in the place were making a lot of noise. And I called them out in a funny way.
Right.
But was like calling them out like, hey, I think these guys have had, like, I don't know if these guys have reached their limit, but, like, give them another round on me. They're here having fun. And at first they didn't really know what to do, but as I kept playing, they were like, oh, I kind of like this music. Okay, everything's cool. And at the end, they were like, can I buy you a beer? Can I buy you a drink? I was like, no, we're good. Like, I'm glad you guys had fun, and thank you for being such a good sport. And because they were like hollering back at me and back and forth, and they were like, "Yeah, no, you too. Thank you for being such a good sport." And then I found out that it was actually a an Irish mob bar that I was playing at, and so I was like, given
Instigating the
I
mob?
was I was instigating the Irish mob in Toronto, but it worked out well. They seemed to enjoy it, and so
Oh my
so I'm still here
god.
to tell the tale.
Wow.
But yeah, like you never know who's going to be in the audience, and again, going back to the UK story, I was playing a random bar in London, and one of the people that happened to be there was connected to this band that was going on tour for a month and a half. You work towards those moments of luck. You
Right.
know, you
Right.
put yourself in positions so that the luck can come to you.
That's great. And what a great way to end off on. Thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate
Right.
you so much. Everything that you said is so inspirational. And I can't wait to put this VOD out because I hope that you and I can share it everywhere so that more and more people get inspired by the words that you have said.
I,
Um,
I really appreciate you having me on the show. This
you
was a lot of
are
fun.
incredibly talented and very humble, which I appreciate. And I think that I'm excited to see where you go next. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, for sure. So we are going to raid out. We are going to go ahead and raid. Should we? How long have he been going?
Good to see you too, Angry.
Let's do Steggy Music.
Oh, Steggy's great.
Yeah, Steggy's only been on for an hour, so let's go ahead and raid. Again, thank you everyone for coming in. Thank you, Josh, for being here, and we'll continue doing these Wiki Wednesdays more and more. So thank you, and let's go raid stay. Oh, here's the whoa! Thank you for the bits. That's
You're
very
awesome,
kind of
Angry.
you. That's very kind of you. Um, this is the really crap.